I'm happy to see that you're here. Good morning, everyone. Happy to see that you're here. We are not as many people as over there, so this must be talking about AI or blockchain or something, which people are more interested in. But our topic, documentation, is by far more sustainable than AI or blockchain or whatever they're talking about. Okay, I'm Christian. First of all, welcome. You will find all the files for this workshop at this link. So please download the zip archive now, link.simplexacode.ch, PA2V, and then you get a zip file. And while I do some more talking, you can unpack the file and so on. In the zip file, you will find the slides I show you, but they are not important at the moment. You will find a text file which says links and notes or something. This is this text file here. And all the important links I have marked with a exclamation point. The one which don't say anything are not important at the moment. And the stuff that begins with a $sign means commands. So I hope you got the message. We need a fresh Python project, preferable in PyCharm. At least I work with PyCharm. And you need to do these pip installs. So you know how to open, this is PyCharm, then you can open a terminal. Or if you work with VS Code or whatever, it's probably the same. And then you simply paste these pip commands. And then it downloads all the stuff that we will need today. Okay, you got the link? Then I can continue. Okay. So first of all, about you. Hopefully this information is right. What's the target audience? I need to stay here. You're involved, I assume, in professional Python projects, or at least Python projects which are not small. If you just do your hobby Python projects, perhaps documentation is not that important at the moment. However, you can still be here, and I hope you remain here because I want you to introduce you to the important topic of documentation, which you can then use for larger projects. And I assume that you are at least a little bit familiar with the basics of lightweight markup languages, restructured text in this case, and possibly the Sphinx documentation generator. But don't worry, it will also give an introduction. So today you will learn about techniques and tools for the Sphinx documentation generator. That's the standard documentation generator for Python. And I will show you some best practices for NumPy, Pandas, and Matplotlib. And I hope you will have some specific take-home messages, take-home ingredients that you really profited from this workshop and can tell all the others over there what they missed here. That's my goal for today. You can always interrupt and ask questions. So we got a lot of time. We got 85 minutes. So I think we can be a nice group and answer questions and talk to each other. Okay, and shortly about me. I'm from Switzerland, as you saw. I'm a certified software developer. So actually Python is not my first language. My first and main language is Java, actually. Ooh. And then I started with Python a few years ago. I call myself certified software developer. So my first Java certification was 20 years ago, and then I regularly updated it. So I'm a regularly certified Java developer, and I did the same with Python. So there are also Python certifications, and I'm also currently own the biggest available one for the general Python programming track. Then I work as a trainer with my own company. This is my Swiss company here, the Simplexacode AG. And when you combine these two, that's what I started a few years ago, working as a technical writer, because I did a lot of teaching in the past and a lot of software development. And with technical writing, I can combine these two things. So these are the three pillars of my company: software development, software trainings, and technical writing. So this is me. I guess I still look the same. It's even the same shirt. And this is my name. And I came to Lithuania yesterday and I saw that you have a lot of these accents in your letters. So I assume that the correct spelling of my name in Lithuania is this. You're all familiar probably with the typical excuses when it comes to software documentation. Number one, we are agile. Why don't you do software documentation? Because we are agile. This is just nonsense. So agile does not mean no documentation. It's never written anywhere that agile means that you do not need to document. Then you hear the second famous argument, which is we have no time. I could give a whole talk about doing the math regarding time and money when it comes to software documentation. So it really, on the long run, it saves you time and it saves you money, definitely. And my favorite, the code is the documentation. No, no, simply not. Hello. Simply not, the code is not the documentation. There are many aspects you can only describe in written documentation, which is not part of the code. Think of all the things that describe why you do the things and not what is being done. So the whys are described in documentation and the whats are probably described in the code. And if you want to know reasons, there are talks about reasons, and during the last year I wrote some articles. So you find the English translation of one article that lists about 10 reasons why you really should do software documentation at this article, Java Doc with Style, at the introduction section. Then I wrote another article, Markup Languages and Software Documentation, which you can read on my blog here. That's the English translation here. And also, if you want, again, some reasons, there was an interview with me last week with Swiss Dev Jobs and Recruit. And then you can also read a lot about reasons to do software documentation. Now there's just, I can give whole talks about software documentation. I just want to give you one important basic thing about documentation because there are common misconceptions about it. And when you ask people about documentation, they sometimes have something in their mind like, oh, it's writing code comments, and code comments are didn't help us in the past, they're just a waste of time and so on. This might even be right, but the problem is that people mix up software documentation and they don't know what they are talking about. So this is the very, very basic thing you need about software documentation. You have kind of two coordinates or two parameters. First of all, you need to decide who is the audience of your software documentation. And when you target external developers or end users, they require a totally different kind of documentation than when you target your internal developers or the architects. They need to see two different things of your software application. And again, when you prepare material for product owners, managers, so let's call them non-technical people, they again need a complete different view on the software product. So keep this in mind. First of all, you need to know who am I addressing this kind of software documentation to. And the second parameter is what level of detail do you want to document, which I like to call the altitude. So you can have a documentation of the overall software architecture, which is usually done in separate documents and using diagrams, which is different from documentation of classes, interfaces, APIs, etc., which you usually do using doc strings, Java doc in Java, JS doc in JavaScript, etc. And again, a lower level is function internals. This is then when you usually use source code comments, and they only become relevant when the developer is at a certain place in this function, in this method, and now needs to understand some quirks. They're only relevant when you're down there. So again, you have the several altitudes. A good starting point for the several altitudes of the C4 model. I don't know if you ever heard about it. Have a look at the website c4model.com. It's a very nice starting point how you could structure your level of detail. So we have two parameters. Who do you want to address and what level of detail do you want to document? And then you see that it results in a lot of different documentations. So always when you talk about documentation, you always need to clarify which kind of documentation are you talking about. Okay, good. This actually is the second talk. In the past, I did a lot of introductory talks about Python documentation. You see them here. So it started in September 2023 in my home country in Switzerland. And then I did more or less the same talk in Italia, in Poland, in Sweden, and so on. And you can watch the video from the basic foundation presentation from PyCon Sweden at this YouTube link I provided here. And just last month, there was a German article published at the website of Informatik Aktuell, which says Python code richtig dokumentieren. So it's about documenting Python code properly, which is more or less a written down version of the talks I gave before. And you can have a read here. I guess you don't know German, but you can use, not a problem. It's a very long article, but you can use the translate features of your browser and at least translate it into English or any other language you are familiar with. Okay, that's what I suggest as introduction. Good. So the basics are Python uses doc strings for documentation. Doc strings are these long comments. They appear at the beginning of a class or function body. And is anyone familiar with Java? Okay, then you know the Java doc comments, they appear above class or method declarations, and in Python it's on the other side, so it's the first thing within the body. That's important. So this is how it looks like. We have, let's use the mouse cursor, we have a class, and then this is a doc string, so a multi-line string actually, and here we have a function. Is it a function or method? Doesn't matter. This is a function, yes, and so on. So these are where doc strings are placed. Doc strings could be accessed at runtime. I don't know if this is important or relevant at the moment. And doc strings can or should contain restructured text syntax. So actually it's just a comment or it's a string. You can write whatever you want into the string, but you should use the restructured text syntax in order to write something which is relevant. Now, when you read books, and I read a lot of books regarding Python documentation, usually the chapters are very small when it comes to documentation. And then for some formal reasons, they tell you, well, you can display the doc strings when you type the help command. I don't know if anyone uses the help command. So I think this is totally outdated. Okay. Then a standard generator of documentation is the PyDoc. I think the advantage is that it's included in the Python standard, so you don't need to install anything. I tried it once, and the web pages it produces looks like from 1990. So I also think you can't use it anymore. So the standard generator for generating Python documentation is the Sphinx documentation generator. Sphinx by itself only converts restructured text syntax into HTML pages or PDF pages. Or usually it's HTML pages. If you want to document APIs, which means the stuff that is written at the classes or the methods and function, etc., then you need the extension Sphinx API doc. Or this is the program, excuse me, this is the program, and this is the extension. And then it really looks into your Python files, extracts the doc strings, and then creates a documentation out of it. So this is the add-ons you need for Sphinx. Good. One person came too late, right? Was it you? Or who? Someone came after I started talking? Oh, it was you. It's you. Okay. There's a download link. Can you read it? Please download the files. link.simplexercode.ch PA2V. Oh, it's a workshop. Okay, but you can just listen. That's also fine. Okay, and you all got the downloads. Then I please ask you to do all these pip installs, which you can also copy paste from the text file you have. And I hope it went through. Did it work for everyone? The pip installs? Who did it and where did it work? Raise your arm. Put your hands up in the air. Okay. Is it downloading? Aha, okay. So is the internet slow? Because I got it cached already. Okay, how long will it? What does it say? How long it will take? Please. What does it say? Anything? Can I have a look? Okay, at least it's going. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Okay. Okay. Perfect. So, okay. After it went through, so you can copy all these lines and just press enter, and then it does all these commands one after the other. At the end, please do exit of the terminal and then open the terminal again, because then you get some commands ready which are not available if you just leave the terminal open. Good. Now I have to wait for you. But in the meantime, you can do something else. We have a lot of examples. So when you downloaded the file, you have some folders which are called example 1 to example 5, right? And you already have your Python project ready. So please copy these 5 folders, right click copy or whatever you do on your machine, and then go to your Python project. And if you use, who uses PyCharm? Who uses something else? What do you use? Okay, so you know how to do it in VS Code. Okay, so I guess it's more or less the same. Click on the project and choose paste, and then you will have in your project, you will have these 5 folders, example 1 to example 5. That's the goal for now. Okay. And unfortunately, I now have to wait. I do all these things on the terminal. So we can, so who is still waiting for the pips install? Yes. Yes, this is a virtual environment. So when you open a new project in PyCharm, it's a new virtual environment. That's the idea, yes. You can still stay. Just listen. Ah, okay. Okay, it's a virtual environment, so what you do in this project does not affect the other. Yeah, so in Python they are separate by default. I don't know how it is with VS Code. Okay, who thinks they are ready to start? Raise your arm. Oh, you're finished now? Okay. So is anyone still waiting or anything? Okay. And what about you? Good. Okay. And over there? Also good. Okay. And about you? Hello. With the green. Whatever. Okay. Good. Then please, we always start. So the command is this one. Go to example 1 and then the subfolder docs. So example 1. and then the subfolder docs, and all the commands we execute are always from the docs folder of the current example we are talking about. So now we are in here. When you look at example 1, you see that there's a module bank account, which is some trivial Python code. So we have a custom error, insufficient funds error, and then we have a class bank account, which has some deposit, withdraw methods, blah, blah, blah. And here you see the doc string. So this is some very basic Python code, which is documented. And now we want to do, as a first step, we want to generate a documentation out of it. Okay. So the command you have to type in once you're in your docs folder is this command here. And I also put it in the text file. So it's this one here. And I always write rm recursive build. So when you create the documentation, it will create a build folder, which contains all the build stuff. And actually, I want to remove it every time we rebuild the documentation. So this is why, I put the remove build in front. Now the actual command is things API doc. Then you tell him where the source folder is of the Python modules. In this case, it's go up and then the folder bank, which is here. So here are the source files of the modules. And then with make HTML, you actually create the Python documentation. So this is what makes things start up and create the Python documentation. So just, you should have internet access, and I hope that it works because it's generating some images on the internet. If not, we have a problem. So it's not very fast. So this document consists of some restructured text code, and it also generates documentation of the Python code. And now it seems to hang, so I assume that the problem is this croaky stuff here. Have you ever heard of croaky? No? Croaky is a web service that can create images out of textual descriptions. And by default, it sends the textual description to the croaky.io server. But the problem is that it's currently down. So we should probably remove the block diagram and the UML diagram. Otherwise, it won't walk through. Because the same happened at home. That the server is not reachable. And then the whole process blocks. So if you remove the croaky commands, then it should work. Give it a try and tell me if it works. Pardon me? Okay, I think it should be included. So what about the others? Works in PyCharm, okay. And what about the other VS Code users? Oh, pardon me? Okay, perhaps you can do pip install make. Does it work? Probably, but I'm not sure. What about the others? Does it work? Okay, you need to talk a little bit louder, please, because I don't hear on this ear, so I have a little bit hearing impaired. Okay, try pip install make and perhaps it will work then. Okay, and what about you? It works? Okay. Now, how can you watch the how can you see the actual documentation? Go to docs build. So this is the folder that got created. HTML, and then let's have a look at the index.html. So in PyCharm, I open with a right click, open in browser Firefox, and then it should look something like this. So if you get a page which looks like this, then you're done. It's perfect. And now you want to see where it is the bank account. If you click on bank here, then you see that it did something with the bank account, and then you can just click and have a look at the classes and methods and exceptions. So you see that it also worked, that it's extracted something from the Python doc strings and created some documentation out of it. So please tell me if it worked. So can you see the website? It's in build HTML, index.html. Okay, just go to cd example1 / docs and then. Okay, and it works for you? Just delete the stuff. Yeah, because it blocks, because the server is unreachable. Here you have at the bottom of index.rst, source index.rst. At the bottom you have block diagram and UML diagram. And please remove the stuff that's in there. The two diagrams, yes, remove them. Because they are currently blocking. I was thinking about setting up my own Croki server, but I didn't have time. And then it worked again when I tried it. I also need to generate the diagram, so perhaps it works in 1 hour again. I had the same at home that it didn't work, and then sometime later it worked. Yes. Yes, definitely. Okay, all the others are fine. Can you see the website you created? Last row. Hmm? Okay, so then remove the diagram stuff. You can also just the headings. You can also remove the headings. Doesn't make a difference. Okay. Hello, you're here for documentation? Yeah. Great, perfect. We started a little bit earlier. Was on the schedule. Hello, hello. Documentation. How much earlier? We changed the schedule. We started at 11, but it was only updated this morning. How much did I miss? A lot? Need to ask the others. I gave some basic introduction. Okay, for those who arrived now, please download this file. It's a zip file. Can you read it? Is this large enough? link.simplexercode.ch, PA2V. This is a zip file that contains the slides and the examples, etc. And you need a clean Python project. So a clean P virtual environment, which you have when you work with PyCharm, and every new project is a new virtual environment. And then you need to execute all these pip installs. But you also have a text file, which is called links and commands. And you can just copy paste, and then it goes through and installs all these things. Perfect. Yes, yes. Is it large enough? We just had example 1. Do you feel confident when I continue? Or is example 1 should run for everyone now? This is important, because if example 1 does not work, then all the others also won't work. What about you? Oh, you just arrived. No. So what did you miss? What you need to execute? So when you when we have done all the pip install, did this went through? Okay. Then you go to, you open the terminal in, what do you work with? PyCharm? VS Code? Should. Okay, I don't know how you compile. It should also work. Go to example1/docs, and then the important command is if you execute the things API doc -o source blah blah, which you can also copy from the text file, which is here. So just do all three commands, doesn't matter. And afterwards make HTML. So this also should work on plain console. When you have your virtual environment and you set everything up as described, and when you copy the 5 example folders into your virtual environment, then these commands should work. Give it a try. You have it on the text file here. Okay. Do you feel confident when I continue? Okay. Now, some words about restructured text. Restructured text is a lightweight markup language. And the standard parser that reads restructured text and creates HTML out of it is called docutils. So sometimes you will see the word docutils when you see some scripts going through or some error messages, whatever. So docutils is the basic parsing tool of restructured text. It has a description of the restructured text syntax. However, this is the reason why it's gray. That's not the best source to learn about restructured text. Now, Sphinx is an advanced documentation generator building on top of docutils. And it also has a restructured text primer. So now it's black, which means this is a relevant link. So if you want to learn the restructured text basics, I suggest that you invest an hour and read the primer written at this website. So I think I also got it prepared here. Restructured text, Sphinx documentation. Here you got the primer. This is what I really suggest that you read. It takes about 1 hour of concentrated reading. And then you get the idea of how the restructured text syntax works. This is my suggestion to you. On top of restructured text, you will find so-called Python developers, a Python developers guide. Or in the Python developers guide, you will find a restructured text markup description, which is written here. And again, I wrote it in gray because this is, again, not something which is important to read. It describes how to use the restructured text syntax if you are developing Python itself. So when you extend, so if you extend the Python kernel, so if you're really that into the Python community that you make Python evolve itself, then you should stick to the standards described here, but it's not relevant if you just have your own Python project. So I saved you a lot of time. If you want to learn restructured text, read the stuff in the middle. That's the best primer I can suggest to you. Okay. Now docstring formats, and I have to warn you, when I prepared the workshop, I dived into all these internals of documentation, and the more I read about it and the more I did my research, the more it turned out to be a mess. So it's just a mess. I'm sorry, yes. So the PEP 287 describes the restructured text docstring format, and it tells you how your docstrings should look like and how you describe attributes and parameters and functions and methods, all that stuff. It's a little bit cumbersome to write, so usually you don't do it the way that it's recommended in this official PEP. You already know this? Because you not? You heard about it? Hmm? Oh, okay. Okay, it looked like, oh yes, I agree, PEP 287 is. Okay. Nah, nah. Don't use AI for documentation. Because the documentation has to describe the things that are not obvious from the code, especially the backgrounds and the reasons why the things are the way they are. And this is not something that any AI can extract from you. That's a short version of why I don't like AI for documentation. Even if it could write, it's not very nice to read. However, there are two things that make it simpler. One is the NumPy style docstrings. So it's this page. So NumPy invented its own style, how the docstrings should look like in order to write Python documentation, and Google did the same. So these are the Google style docstrings. These are both links I provided on the text file you have. And the last two formats require the so-called Napoleon extension. So when you install Napoleon, which we already did with this pip install, I think we have Napoleon in there, then it means it's able to read the NumPy style and the Google style docstrings. And let's have a short look at the NumPy description. So this is the NumPy style guide, and here you see it tells you how you can describe functions and methods and so on, how you can write deprecation warnings, etc., etc. And here we have the Google style guide, which is actually shorter, and it tells you how Google style docstrings look like. And actually, I think this is pretty cool because it's actually just a definition table. And it's pretty easy to write and pretty easy to read. So the only thing you need to remember is how the things called args and returns and races, etc. This is the only thing you need to remember. So, and everything else is pretty straightforward when it comes to writing the documentation in Google style. Okay. And let's have a look at them. Let's now move to example 2. And for those who don't have a laptop, I will demonstrate everything. So now let's go to example 2/docs and then again start the Things API doc, make HTML, etc. This is what I copied in the text file. So you can then use this command here. And for everyone who cannot follow on their own laptop, I will show it so that you can still profit from this workshop. So I'm now at example 2. And first of all, I show you what example 2 is about. We are here. And I downloaded from the website from Napoleon. That's the add-on that interprets NumPy and Google style syntax. I downloaded 2 files. And they are here in the folder styles. And one Python file is called example Google. So here you see a large document that describes some arbitrary whatever Python code using the Google style docstrings. Blah, blah, blah. We will see it in a second. And we have an example NumPy file, which describes Python code in the NumPy notation. So you see that the headings are a little bit different, for example, and the parameter descriptions and so on. Now, if we generate it, where am I? /docs. So go to the docs folder. So. Okay. When we create everything, we get a build folder, and then we open the index.html again. Open in Firefox. And then you see again, it looks similar. And now we can click on Google style and NumPy style. And now we see this one here is the Google style, how it was able to extract all the information from the doc strings written in Google style notation, and how it created the documentation from it. And here's the same with the NumPy style. So I guess the Python code is the same, so the documentation probably should also look the same. I haven't compared if the Python actually is the same. Did it work for you to manage it? At least two? What about you? Works? Okay. Please always interrupt or ask if anything's unclear, or look at the screen. Yes. Yes, always.
So can we get different formats documentation too, like Markdown?
Yes, there is kind of a Markdown add-on. For my other talks, I have a special slide for Markdown. So I give you the quick summary. In general, I really discourage you from using Markdown because it's a non-standardized lightweight markup language. So you have a lot of dialects or flavors, whatever. So this makes it not very sustainable. The second thing is Markdown has a very limited functionality. So you can do the stuff you can do with Markdown with restructured text. All you need to do is remember how you write the headings and how you write the bullet lists and these things. But I think for an IT person, this is not too difficult to switch from star to dot or whatever. So these little things. But it's the same ease of use when you use restructured text. And the third important argument is within Python programs, you should stay Pythonic. So you should do the things the way they are done in Python. That's called Pythonic. You know the adjective being Pythonic? Okay. So you would
Legacy content documentation and still like the grandfathers did.
well, probably they didn't have NumPy style or Google style, or they didn't even have things at the time when the legacy code was written. So I suggest to get rid of it and replace it step by step, restructure text. That's what I suggest. At least I can say if a new Python project, don't use, so do it the Pythonic way, which is use the restructured text. That's the standard thing to do in Python. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything and I like ASCII-Doc far more than I like restructured text, but the reason staying Pythonic is actually a very big reason. But actually, to answer your question, there is a Markdown add-on for Sphinx, Markdown extension, whatever, so Sphinx is able to interpret Markdown. So this is technically possible. And I also answered the political side of this decision. Yes.
So I came late. Maybe you have already touched this topic. But personally, I don't have this really good relationship with Sphinx. I much better prefer MKDocs instead. Due to the fact that it has a little bit more flexibility and a lot more easier to work with if you don't have that much experience with setting up Sphinx and whatnot. But what's your take? Why, for example, did you choose to use Sphinx of all of the possible toolsets that you have for writing documentations?
Okay.
I know that some really big projects they use Sphinx. They also use read the docs as one of the really popular options. And MKDocs is, I guess, the rising star, maybe rising star. But what's your take?
Okay. I did not choose Sphinx. And to be
Sphinx
honest,
chose you, right?
yes, the reason is they Pythonic. So Sphinx or restructured text and Sphinx was made for Python. It's 20 years old when all these things started. These things started. I don't know how old things is, but it's really tailored to Python. So this is the standard way of doing it in Python. And the title of the talk was Exemplary Python Documentation. So in a second, I will show you Matplotlib, NumPy, etc. What cool things you can do with it. I personally would not choose things if I was not in the Python world. Because yes, it's chaotic and it's a very cumbersome generator. So if you have a little error in a configuration, everything blows up, doesn't which doesn't make me very happy, which does not correspond to my philosophy. And at the end, I will tell you something about ASCII-Doc, which goes towards your direction. So MKDocs is Markdown based. I prefer ASCII-Doc. And then I will just open up the world a little bit. Doesn't it make sense to use something else in order to do the software documentation? This will be the last slides I will show you then. Is it answered so far?
Yes, yes, I would agree. Sphinx has, throughout its time, has gathered a lot of, let's say, experience of how things should look like. There's a lot of, I assume there's a lot of neat things that people working with Sphinx have already, let's say, learned through the development, how things should look like, what is the best practices, and everything is encoded into the Sphinx. It's just that the fact itself that it's cumbersome to work with, especially if you want something something more better looking, not something from the
Stock.
2000s. So
Yeah. And you got this, right? You got the pip list?
yeah,
This tells you everything. So this is just a list of additions you need to install in order to obtain the documentation, which we will now look at. It's all add-ons, 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 plugins, plugins, extensions, 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 which is not very nice. It's like Markdown, which you can also extend. Okay. You just scratched something. Sphinx comes with several themes, so you can go to the website sphinxthemes.org, which I already linked, and you can do it in parallel while I'm talking, and you can have a look at what the different themes you can choose from. You can also make your own one if you know how to program cascading style sheet CSS. You also find a list of several hundred projects that were documented using Sphinx on this link. And in specific, I will now show you 3 examples of NumPy, Pandas, and Matplotlib of some very nice documentation pages. I suggest once you know the basics of things, etc., learn the documentation style from other module source codes. Always look out for a GitHub button. So when you read the official doc of Matplotlib or NumPy or any Python module, try to find a GitHub button, and then it links you to the GitHub, and then within the GitHub you can either read the doc strings of the Python stuff, or you can read the restructured text files if it's files that are not written in doc strings. So this is a good way to learn. For example, the NumPy file here, which is the ND array. I guess everyone knows what an ND array is. This one is the corresponding source on the GitHub. So here you find the restructured text file of the documentation of the ND array. And this is what we will do just now. Okay. Because of time issues, do you mind if we skip this? This example would show you how you can install styles and themes, or how you can change them, because so far it looked a little bit unsexy. But when you go to Sphinx themes.org, the example would have been that you now just look at one and find one, for example, cloud. That's strange. Okay. Oh, it has to look like this. Okay. Huh? No, it doesn't have to look like this. So you like the document, whatever, and then it should tell you how you install it. So again, it's an extension. So in this case, if you want to have this one, you do the pip install things document theme, and then you need to change the parameter HTML theme, and all these configuration things in things are in the conf.py file, and when you go down a little bit, you see HTML theme, and this is where you can type in the new theme you want to have. Hopefully, if you needed to do the pip install, you also did the pip install of this theme you were looking at. Some are included already, and some you have to install separately. this is what this example would have been about, but because of time issues, I think that we skip it. Now NumPy. I showed you, I want to show you one. First of all, I go to example 3. Down, example 3, docs. With S. So, print working directory. Okay, example 3. Now, this is a very cool site. Let's go here. It's the n-dimensional array. And this is a perfect site which shows you how documentation should be written. This is an introduction to the n-dimensional array from NumPy. You see cool styles, or you see a lot of references to other classes and types, etc. Then you have some source code snippets. It gives you examples how you can achieve certain things. You have cross-references. See also, if you want to know more, read this. You have mathematical formulas.
But, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Is it okay if I interrupt?
Yes, if it's not too long, yes.
So, but this specific web page, it's not being written with the Sphinx, right? I think it's the read the docs.
It's written with things, so I will show you the restructured text source code in a second. It's written restructured text.
It looks a lot better than.
And actually, read the docs is just a website that hosts documentation. So read the docs itself is not a generator. It's not a syntax. It's actually just like GitHub. It's just a place where to put documentation. But perhaps you thought, this looks something familiar. The theme, no, not the PyData Sphinx theme, but I think it's based on the read the docs theme. That's why it probably triggered you and you say, this looks kind of similar too. Okay, it's a very nice thing. You have mathematical formulas, you have these admonitions, so these are the warning or notes, etc., which also looks pretty cool. You have tables of other attributes, references, etc. So this is pretty cool. In example 3, I copied you the offline version of this file. You find it in source. Example 3, doc source, and here you have the restructured text code. Now this answers your question completely. This is the restructured text code of the ND array. So it's not a doc string, it's a pure restructured text code because it's kind of a tutorial. And here you see the admonitions. Here's the admonitions. Admonitions, excuse me. Admonition is explosives. Admonition, excuse me. And here you see how they include their source code snippets, how they write clean paragraphs, how they create their cross-references, etc. I will make it run. In the meantime, it's just make HTML. So this is pretty simple. We don't need the Sphinx API doc. Make HTML. Now it also got the auto summary. Now it will also look at all the references. That's why we needed to install NumPy, because now it looks at the NumPy source code in order to extract all the tables and so on. And then we get a build folder, HTML, index.html. Open in Firefox. Bloop. And click here, the n-dimensional array. And then we got more or less similar looking web page, this time created offline. I give you 2 minutes. No matter if you made it work or not, you can look at the original on the NumPy web page. Just have a short look at the restructured text code and choose one of these and try to find out, hey, how did they actually write the mathematical formulas? How did they include code snippets, etc.? Just have a look at the restructured text source code for 2 minutes and just get a first idea of how they achieved it.
They use the functions.
Yes. So you can, a nice thing is look at the original site and then you see, oh, they made formulas. So how do you find the formula? Look at correspond to memory, for example, and then make a search correspond to memory, and then you see it, oh, they have some math block, and oh, it looks something like LaTeX, math notation, etc. So this is what I want you to do. Just find something which you thought, oh, this looks interesting, and then find it in the restructured text source code, how they achieved it. Not if you listen to my workshop where I gave you the best website which gives you the restructured text primer. So the basics are actually pretty quick. So how you can write paragraphs, headings, bullet lists, so all the stuff you can do with Markdown. It's the same learning curve for restructured text. Then I suggest that you watch one of my introductory talks, which tells you how you get the things running, or even better, read this German article, which tells you really step by step how you get the things running, the things documentation generator, which unfortunately I cannot show you today because of time issues. So restructured text basics are pretty simple. Now the problem starts with, you see cool things on the web. How did they achieve this? What you're currently looking at. And then you think, oof. And this is where the problem starts, because then they have several extensions which they included, and add-ons and plugins, and they even have program documentation. So probably you will see that some things you cannot even find in this documentation because they have some decorators that just copy documentation from somewhere else and just paste it in. So actually it's a program documentation which can become very messy. So the basics are fast, and then, yes, the more you deal with it, the more the hell opens up. If you work at a Python company and you really do Python, I suggest it's worth investing the time to stay Pythonic. If you have multi-language projects, I don't know which kind of languages you're working with. Perhaps you can look for something else. But let me show you the final slides, and then perhaps you will get some more ideas. Okay, do you mind if I continue? Now let's have a look at pandas. I guess you all know pandas. Again, there's a nice exemplary web page which I want to show you, which is the description of the pandas data frame. This now is not a restructured text file. This is docstrings written in NumPy syntax, which again is restructured text kind of. But now the source is Python code and not restructured text file. I also like this site. You have some very nice descriptions of the constructors and the parameters and the methods, and again combined with usage examples, cross references, etc., etc. I prepared this for you at example 4. Go down /example 4 docs, do not forget. Then we need to execute example 4. It's down here with, now we need the Sphinx API doc again, because we are now extracting doc strings. Now you see the auto summary plugin, which is again another plugin which creates the overviews of different methods. And hopefully I can show you the offline version now. Build HTML, open with Firefox. Bloop. Click on pandas data frame. Ooh, okay. So this is the offline version of the one I created, and you see it looks pretty similar to the original on the online version. Perhaps what's interesting here, just have a look how they implemented all these parameters, returns, nodes, etc. So have a look at the original source code, no matter if it compiled or not. So it was here in example 4. You have a subfolder pandas, and this is the frame.py. This is the real implementation of a pandas data frame. I copied it from pandas directly, and just scroll through it, and then you see the different doc strings. Blah, blah, blah. And then you see the different doc strings written in NumPy notation. And then actually that's what Sphinx does. It extracts all these doc strings, and then you in return get these nice summaries here, how the constructor looks like, etc. It's all extracted from the doc strings, which I think is pretty cool. The idea of a lightweight markup language is that the compiled version or that the generated version of the text is nearly or is readable, but you can also read the original source code, which is also readable. So it doesn't look so as sexy as the HTML page does, but again, you can read everything and you can understand everything. That's the idea of a lightweight markup language. No matter if it's generated or not, the documentation is always readable, which I think is a pretty cool thing. Compared to HTML, it gets more difficult because you have a lot of these opening tags and closing tags, so everything becomes bloated with these tags. So HTML reading in pure source code isn't so nice anymore. Yes, please.
What's your, let's say, take on, I mean, if you are using doc strings and you're a really good copywriter, the file itself becomes really big. And if you're, also having to develop, it becomes really clunky, right? For example, now I'm looking at this frame.py file. It's a lot. It's a lot of code where, let's say, maybe 70% of the whole content of the file are the doc strings. Now, how do you choose, for example, whether to go with RST to simply declutter, to decouple the code from the documentation, or when it's the better choice to do everything in doc strings?
Okay. In the last slide, I will show you suggestion. The point is, so first of all, when you have an IDE, which you hopefully do, you can collapse the documentation. So it already, I think you can also set it up that it automatically collapses all the documentation. You see, now we saved 130 lines, which already makes it simpler. Another big thing is the concept of docs as code. So on the one hand, you want to have your documentation as close to the source code as possible. This is important because if you have your source code over there, and then you have a Confluence at your company. You have Confluence? Do you like it? Nobody likes it. So here's your source code, and over there is the Confluence, which describes something of your application. There is no link in between. So especially when you're a newbie programmer, start a new company, do some development extension, and nobody told you, and you also don't find it, that there is some page on Confluence which describes the module you were just editing. The problem is the big distance. And when you have this big distance, that's the reason why documentation and source code drift apart. So that's what many people tell you, oh, we don't do documentation because it gets outdated pretty fast. This is kind of correct if you are not aware of the link between them. So that's a strong reason to keep your documentation within the source code. But again, it also has disadvantages. So the last one I wanted to show you is the matplotlib. This is kind of impressive. I don't know if everyone is still following the laptop or just listening. Hello. Documentation? Yeah, perfect. Come in. So it's too late now to set up the laptop, but you can just enjoy. The last thing I wanted to show you is the matplotlib. That's example 5. And dot 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 example 5 matplotlib docs. Okay, and then I need now what you see in example 5. That's a workshop. We already have been going for 1 hour, but you can stay here and enjoy software documentation. Yes, stay. So, this is a cool thing. When you look at this file pyplot, that's kind of the pyplot introduction of matplotlib. You do not see a single graphic. Of course, you cannot because this is source code, right? But what you see is that somehow it creates some plots and other stuff is written in as comments. Now what we do, example 5 is here. If we now generate this kind of documentation, what it does, it executes the Python code, so it creates plots. And with this plugin, which name I forgot, the plugin is called Things Book Theme. No, Things Gallery, that's the one. With this plugin, if we now look at the website it created, blub blub blub, index, open in Firefox, you will now see blub blub that we now have a HTML page with created plots. So during generation of this documentation, and you saw the proof, I did everything offline, it created the plots and bloop, imported them into your HTML, which is pretty cool. Now I could change the plot commands and you will see that it also has a difference, that you will see how it changes here. So this is the last example I wanted to show you.
This is so beautiful, but I start to think how much time and effort I should put in to make it like this. It kind of like all falls apart. Because looking at the codes, throughout all of the examples, I think with the matplotlib, it's I guess the most cleanest, but still, I mean,
yeah, you need to think of thing which I called multiplicator. When you work at a company and you have 3 other guys with you, so it doesn't pay off if you invest 1 week of writing documentation or such a nice documentation. Perhaps this took a month, whatever. It doesn't pay off for 3 other guys. But remember, matplotlib has thousands, if not millions of users. So every minute spent in making this documentation better helps another 1 million people save, even if it's seconds of time. So this really pays off. So you need to see the scale. So, and I'm very happy that NumPy and Matplotlib, etc., really have some great documentation because it really pays off. And I do not have to look at the source code of NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, etc., because the documentation is enough telling me how the things work. So I wanted to show you the crow key. It doesn't work because the server is down. For the next presentation, I will have my own server. All of you have a look at this page, crowkey.io/examples.html. And while I continue talking, I can do it. You can do it live. Crowkey. You can have it also in the text file. It also always scrolls up. crowkey.io/examples.html. This is called diagrams as code. So you can write text, for example, here. This is the block diag syntax. Crowkey is a server that is able to interpret several diagram syntaxes. And on this example page, bloop, 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 you have a lot of examples. So let's just have a look at the block diagram. This is what you need to write. Block diag arrow generates arrow block diagrams, blah, blah, blah. This is what you need to write, and this is what gets generated out of your textual description. So this is far better than using PowerPoint or draw.io or whatever tools you use, because you can write, you can describe the diagram as text, you can check it in your Git, whatever, and it always gets generated original form. So you do not need to store any picture. So when we talked about the matplotlib documentation, actually it's far more sustainable if you write the matplotlib commands and they get created every time, instead of doing the plots once, making a screenshot, saving the PNG file or the SVG file somewhere, and then suddenly someone updates the documentation or the example, and then they forget to update the picture, and then the source code, the example source code, does no longer match the diagram. This is, at the end, this costs you more time than doing the programming right at once. We can UML. I'm just looking for the class diagram. Let's look for plant UML. So if you're from, who asked? Was it you? Yes. So if you're familiar with UML, you will probably know what this thing is, or there are more plant UML. There is a class diagram. Where's the class diagram? I know there is one. You probably know this is C4. There's a class diagram. Where is it? Class diagram, but you can create these typical UMS class diagrams with plant UML. Okay, plant UML, it's called class diagram. So I'll show you a screenshot and bloop. If you use plant UML, this is how the diagrams you can create. This describes the syntax, blah, blah, and this is what gets created out of it. So yes, you can create all the UML things with plant UML, and Croaky is able to interpret plant UML. So what you need to look for is plant UML. Google plant UML and read about it, and then you see all these great diagrams you can create out of this description. Okay, actually I'm finished with the examples, so the last 5 minutes I want to tell you something about AsciiDoc. We already had the discussion. I personally don't like Sphinx too much. My personal favorite language is AsciiDoc. How did I find it? I once compared all the lightweight markup languages which are described at the English Wikipedia. At the time it was 21, now it's 23. And then I had some criteria. I wanted to find a universal language that kind of everyone fits. And then I came up with this top 4, textile. Probably had never heard textile, but it's pretty cool. MediaWiki, that's the notation you use if you edit the Wikipedia. Perhaps you've done it once. That's MediaWiki called. Then restructured text, which we talked about now, and AsciiDoc, which I think is even cooler than restructured text. Restructured text is kind of nerdy, kind of clumsy sometimes. However, it has the same functionality as AsciiDoc, but AsciiDoc, for me, it's smoother and even a nice thing for non-tech people. If you want to read about the history of all this, how I did it, read this article, which you already have the link for. Markup languages and software documentation, that's the English translation I gave you. It originally was a German article published on a German IT magazine, Java magazine, and this is the English translation, which tells you the basics about lightweight markup languages. Now, if AsciiDoc is such a cool language, couldn't we use AsciiDoc for Python docstrings? And answer is probably no, because I'm not aware that there's any things, converter, extension, plugin, add-on, whatever, that's able to read AsciiDoc. So things in AsciiDoc, they don't match. Also, we had this discussion when this guy was sitting here. you should stick to Python standards. So if you have a Python project, stick to Python standards, and it's probably not a good idea to change the documentation language. It's the same for Java. We had 1 or 2 Java programmers here. In Java, you use Javadoc and you don't invent something else. So use Javadoc for Java and use things for Python and don't invent something else. Also, don't exaggerate the features of the doc strings, and then the difference doesn't matter too much. Other way around, if ASCII-doc for Python is not a good idea, what about the other way around? Could we use restructured text for all our software documentation? Just think of, we are a company and we have a multi-language project. So our big application consists of Python parts and Java parts and TypeScript parts and Kotlin parts and whatever. This is kind of a typical setup. Actually, it would work because restructured text is a fully lightweight markup language. I already told you ASCII-doc is a little bit more generic, especially for non-techies. However, it's not a good idea for Python because it's non-Pythonic. Restructured text would be perfectly fine for Python, but then again, it wouldn't be fine for Java and it wouldn't be fine for JavaScript, etc. And as I told you, it's more nerdy, more clumsy, and you need to be more tech savvy in order to write and read restructured text. Now, this is the big idea I have. What if we don't write doc strings at all, etc., but we have external documents and we tag our source code and include the snippets? This is possible. So you have your source code, no matter if it's Python or Java or whatever, and you just write a tag which kind of reads tag, then you give an ID number or ID. You say begin ID and end ID. And then you can tell with an ASCII-doc or restructured text, include the snippet with this ID. And then it goes to the source code and copies the source code in real time. So how it was at the point of generation, it looks at the original source code and includes it into your documents. Actually, this is a good thing because it works across all programming language. So you can use the same way of documenting things, no matter if you document Python code or Java code or JavaScript code, etc. However, now we have a bigger distance between source code and documentation. This is a big advantage if documentation, and we discussed it in some minutes ago, it's a big advantage if source code and documentation are close to each other, but as you said, it can bloat up the files. So this perhaps might be a good compromise. I will do some more research and create prototypes for this. What I want to tell you, if you work at a company and you say, hey, we should do documentation, these are very important decisions you have to make. So carefully discuss the pros and the cons and do not just start with something. You really need to discuss how you want to do it. And what I even more suggest, watch out for upcoming talks or poster articles from me, and perhaps in a few months I will come up and publish how it would look like with this code snippet, including stuff. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's a good idea, and then you will definitely get notified once this will be published from my side. Good. A very last idea I want to give you. So when you, after the conference, when you go to your company and tell your boss that you learned something about software documentation, I want to, again, there are talks about this topic, and now this is one specific point of these talks. You know what the free-for-all editing philosophy is. It means we have our Confluence or whatever, and everyone can do the documentation in there, which usually means no one does it. It's called, so the reason is not every developer or architect can and wants to write good documentation. Many don't want to, and there are also many people who say, please don't touch the file. You're not a good writer. Please don't write documentation. You're not good at it. There's a psychological thing, it's called diffusion of responsibility. Have you heard of it? So when somebody attacks you and you lie on the floor and somebody kicks at you, the chance that somebody will help you is lower when this happens in the middle of the city where a lot of people are walking around than when this happens to you at the forest where there's one person coming every 5 minutes. Because when you have a lot of people standing around, everyone thinks, why should I help? Why should I call the police? He can also do it. She can also do it. Why should it be me? This is called diffusion of responsibility. And I've seen this so many times in companies. We have inconsistent quality standards. People are not synchronized with what they should document. People think, oh, that's clear. And other people think, no. And you know the saying, too many cooks spoil the broth. So documentation written by many people usually is not a good idea. So concentrated on few people, single person or two people who want to write documentation at your company and who are good at writing documentation. And these people could be called documentation manager, they could be called technical writers, or some little bit more funny, you could call these people doctator. And if you ever wondered how such a dictator looks like, here is an illustration of a dictator. So this is really a giveaway to you. Try to introduce such a role in your company. Concentrate documentation stuff on a single person, which again lowers your anxiety. But you had, oh, they really need to learn all of this. It looks complicated. Yes, it is complicated. But if you have one person who can do it every day, then they will set up a very cool pipeline. They will deal with all the obstacles and they will really look for a cool template. This is the responsible of this one guy at the company who's responsible for documentation. And then you do not need to have to worry about it anymore. That's something you can decide. The technical writer definitely should be responsible of all the infrastructure and he should be responsible of all the politics. So he should also look at how things are going. If the technical writer really writes all the stuff, or if you just say, hey, you added a new module last week, why didn't you extend the documentation? That's something you can decide. But at least this guy should be responsible for the technical infrastructure of documenting. And if he or she really writes everything, that's something you can discuss. So my question to you, I'm finished. Can you just give me shortly, what are your take-home messages from today? Tell me the one or two or three things that you really said, yes, it paid off to come here. I will take this and this and this point home. Okay, whatever, good, yes. But oh, the Discord questions, okay. Okay.
Observation from my own experience. In a couple of my Python projects, the one that then resulted as a Python library, I found through time that using specific design patterns, project design patterns, such as domain-driven architecture or clean architecture, can really help to, I guess, declutter how the documentation might look like in the future. Because just as an example, the domain-driven architecture, DDD, domain-driven design, it separates. It kind of like creates, it decouples the use case, the code that actually is being implemented on the technical side from the code that is being exposed to the users.
Yeah.
So basically, you don't write the documentation for every single piece of code. You only write the piece of documentation for the piece of code that's exposed to the end user. And since everything is split per use case, and I assume, for example, different developers might be working on different use cases. For example, interacting with AWS S3, then creating something on EC2 instance. So different use cases, different developers. They could be responsible for their own use case definition,
Okay.
use case documentation, and that in a way is kind of a way how to neatly package a really broad idea of documenting everything as one big project into like small
Okay.
steps.
Got
And
it. Got it. Got it. Got it. So you're talking about architecture is a nice thing, which I totally agree. You have your little areas, which is also a nice thing. You came a little bit later, but this is what I said before you came. There's not one documentation. You have to define two things. You have to define who are you writing to. So you have several documentations in parallel, and what kind of user you have to decide to who are you writing to. Is this an end user documentation or is it an internal development documentation? That's the one thing you need to define first before you even type a single word. And what level of detail do you want to document? That's the second. So one parameter, second parameter, and then you see that you have a lot of documentations you should write. So there's not a single documentation. There are several documentations for different audiences and altitudes. I guess this aligns with what you wanted to say. Okay, exactly.
Thank you so much for your speech. My question was also similar to like defining the stakeholder. So for three different stakeholders, that means we should have three different documentation for each of them, or is there a way we could have one built on top of the other, again built on top of the third?
Of course, you don't need to invent everything on your own, but just be clear. Are you writing to a non-technical person? Are you writing to your manager who's more in, or to your PO who's more interested in how the business processes are, or are you writing to an internal developer who needs to know what version of Python is being used and what kind of compile optimizations you do? These are totally two different things. Of course, you don't need to invent everything. Again, there are many things that overlap. So of course, the developer should know about the business processes, but you could also put some flags and say, hey, this part of the documentation should be exported to the POs, and this part of the documentation should not be exported to POs, but this should be exported to developers. So you can also write a big document and then put some flags on it, and then you can have a build pipeline, and then it automatically creates these pieces are for the internal developers, these pieces are for the POs, and these pieces are for the end users. This is also a way you can do it.
Writing new classes and function, you're at the same time trying to write a doc string as well, or just the basic idea of it? So do you think at the same time we should have an idea on who our end user for documentation?
But you probably don't write doc strings for POs because that's already very detailed. The altitude is already very low. But I read when I came here on the airplane, I read an article which was already 20 years old, but I will post it on my LinkedIn soon because it really nailed it. It said you should start with documentation, because documentation should write down your ideas and why the things are they are. And if you say, hey, now I'm writing a bubble sort algorithm because theoretically it's worse than quicksort, but for our kind of data, bubble sort really pays off because blah, blah, blah. That's the reason why we now use a bubble sort algorithm. This is something that must be there. And that's the reason why is there a bubble sort algorithm and not a quicksort algorithm.
Another question, maybe you have any thoughts on teams who work with notebooks or Jupyter, like something that is not standard Python module?
I visited a talk in PyCon Poland from a Polish lady who said don't use Jupyter notebooks, and for 45 minutes she said why Jupyter notebooks are a bad idea. And I sat in there like you did. I did like this. Yes, you're right, you're right. I fully agreed with what she said. I'm not a friend of Jupyter notebooks. I like Python to be real Python and not any Scratch or Cell mode. I strongly suggest to use pure Python. I'm not a friend of notebooks. However, if you use notebooks, then you got the different cells and you can have the markdown cells and you can have the Python code cells. At least it makes it easier for you to have documentation and code. Did this answer your question?
There was a technical side to it as well. Like if we were to run something like Sphinx on the notebook as well.
Oof. No. Oh, no, this makes my stomach hurt. Notebooks are already a mess, and if you combine it with things, then it's even. Perhaps you saw this plugin that we installed. It's called Jupyter Lite Sphinx, and when we compiled the NumPy locally, you saw a button, try it out. Do I still have it here? Which is pretty cool. No, it was the NumPy. Yep, it's this one. Here you see a button, try it with Jupyter Lite. And we also installed a kernel. So actually this example is now converted to a Jupyter notebook and the kernel is on your machine, which is pretty cool. And now you can execute the things. And here it's not, let's not make, here, let's change the numbers and, okay, forget it. But it should work kind of live. So this is the link between documentation and notebooks. Yes. So code is not written by LLMs, hopefully. Please, it's good to give you ideas, and I also do it, but please, you need to understand every line that you put into the repository. So please do not simply copy any stuff from LLMs which you do not understand. Please don't. The other way around, I think you asked if LLMs create the documentation. I don't know if you came on time or if you came later. Okay, I said something before. The very short version. Documentation should document the why. W-H-Y. So the reason why the following things are the way they are. And they do not necessarily need to document the what, because the what is described in the code, but the reason behind it and the backgrounds behind it, they have to be written in documentation. This is not something which any AI can do for you, because you were the one who invested hours in thinking and trying and finally coming up with a solution. And then please write it down that, hey, I did it like this because that's the reason that writes down the hours you invested in it. Does this help? Okay, please. So you already worked with C4 model, that's what I heard. And you profited from, but you draw it by hand, kind of. Yes. The problem is that things are often not linked together in the source code. You have to think about how you can link them in your source code. Have you thought of doing some reference IDs? We could talk during lunch. I currently cannot come up with a solution within a few seconds. But when I hear microservices, these are usually different languages the things really have no connection from a compiler perspective, so the compiler cannot even know that there is something over there and something over there. So microservices, that really makes it hard. I guess there will still be a lot of manual work in order to keep the overview, because there's no technique that knows about all these components. I'm afraid so, yes. I'm also not a friend of microservices for exactly this reason. It just adds a lot of noise around the actual course. So meanwhile, I visit a lot of conferences. The trend is going away from microservices again, which makes me very happy. Yes, because you have a lot of unnecessary stuff around it. Even the communication, then you need REST API calls in order to be able to talk between these two. I mean, this is just unnecessary complexity. We can talk at lunch, but I can give you 1 or 2 links of presentations that say we moved away from microservices. So when you plan a big refactoring, have you actually considered to make a monolith? Modulith, that's an artificial word. It's the combination of a modules and monolith. Actually means just have clear separations within your big application. But you don't need microservices anymore. Just look that you have a clear structure and then you're actually fine. Or you mentioned these hexagonal architectures and the DDD, etc. These are again architectures which really help you declutter, but you don't need microservices. Are you Amazon or Google, or do you have anything really big that really needs to scale? Okay, so you got the answer. So you don't need microservices. If you don't need to scale, you don't need microservices. So perhaps it was created when it was hype 5 or 10 years ago. I don't know the history of your project, but from a pure technical perspective, there's no reason to do microservices if you are not a very big company which really needs a scalable product. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree. So, did you have some take-home messages? Did you all profit from being here?
Message is that I did try to look into things for some time, a couple of attempts really, but it was overall one big huge mess.
Yes.
And what I really liked is that you provided some really good examples. I already had seen that pandas, NumPy, they really had some really neat documentation, but it was really helpful that you cherry-picked the examples that we could rebuild offline, and all of the, for example, details in the slides. I believe they were extremely helpful, especially with the grok here.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So that was extremely useful. Because sometimes I need a diagram. Of course, it's better to have it built within Python. But I was always missing the key part, which tool to do which part of the diagram. So
Yeah.
overall, I think that this is a
Yeah. Perfect. So, thank you so much. I think we should really stop now. If you want to talk, we can have lunch and talk over there. Thank you for coming. I enjoyed.